It's finally here. Viewers have been asking me to cover this new free-to-play hero shooter for months. Some say that it's just a poor attempt at a Counterstrike clone, while others claim that it'll be the most successful esport of the next decade. The game was released only a few days ago, and already it's been called both one of the most refined steps in gaming and yet another license to print money by an unethical publisher. I'm of course talking about Crucible, the Amazon Games PC exclusive, ready to take the world by storm. Forget dumb shit games like Overwatch or League of Legends that have an overflowing roster of characters, because if you can't count every hero on your hands, the game is too fucking confusing. These heroes are a fucking masterclass in character design. Introducing Avatar 2, Amazon Watering Can, Space Road Trucker, every squad leader in the Black Ops franchise, your most dependable ally from Civilization 6, Destiny 2, cannon fodder. Hey guys, remember that I used to be a soldier, Bangalore, Zarya with a flamethrower, and Rocket Raccoon Rule 34. Before you get started, get ready for the player versus environment versus player experience by taking a minute of constantly holding down left click to kill this boss. But don't worry about that shit in game, because a team of 4 will shred that shit before you even get to hit them at all. However, before you even get to that point, you'd better hold your fucking horses like the enthusiastic piece of shit you are, because like everything else Amazon makes, you'd better be prepared to go fuck yourself if you live in a nation with kangaroos. The gameplay itself sets itself up to be pretty fucking fun, with some surprisingly interesting abilities able to be employed by some of the characters. One of them literally fights by quickly growing offensive plants, and I wish more hero shooters would be brave enough to be this insane with their character design. The bad news is that I had more fun playing as a fucking watering can than I did as anyone else in the roster. The problem is, in a game that had such interesting character abilities, the best ones to play always seemed to be the most generic. Gunman and Gun Lady just seemed to fucking stomp other classes when it came to standard fights, and don't even fucking look at the close quarter characters. The melee combat is just so fucking floaty, and it's hard to even tell whether a hit actually lands. At one point, I just ran up to a guy and held left click for 13 seconds straight until he died, and there was nothing that the enemy team could do to stop me. The combat in this game comes under the category of what I like to call clusterfuck gameplay. I personally don't think this style of game is inherently bad, with Battlefield and Overwatch both being excellent examples of what they can offer. However, in the case of Crucible, it just doesn't feel smooth, and the game looks as if it's trying to do a lot of things at once without actually doing any of them successfully. The game modes themselves are interesting concepts, with my favorite being Heart of the Hives, where 2 teams of 4 need to fight over a single boss that spawns every few minutes on the map. When the boss eventually dies, they'll drop a heart, which needs to be slowly captured by a member of either team, and the first to 3 hearts will win the game. Some games will have incredibly chaotic combat, with both teams fighting each other and the boss at the same time, which usually ends up with the kill feed scrolling faster than the US national debt. Other times you can just walk up to the boss entirely uncontested, hold left click for a minute straight, and claim a heart without ever seeing another player. The space where matches take place is far too large for the modes with fewer players, but this pill becomes even harder to swallow when you find out that Crucible only has a single fucking map. They could have just made 4 maps that were significantly smaller, but this was their vision for the game. In one of my matches that lasted around 20 minutes, less than 60 seconds was actually spent fighting anything that wasn't an NPC. Fingers crossed for the next generation of games, and hope developers realize that although it's possible to make a 400 square game space, no one really gives a shit if it looks as if it was randomly generated. No Man's Sky should have been the academic case study for this concept in 2016. This isn't to say that there aren't some strokes of greatness over this flawed canvas. The MOBA elements that allow you to level up throughout the match and gain additional perks based on how you spec your playstyle is a nice addition. In fact, much of Crucible feels much closer to a game like League of Legends than it does to something like Overwatch. At one point, I chased an enemy player on low health, halfway across the map, and needless to say, it didn't end well. Other systems, like being able to grind wildlife to level up faster and entering the battle via drop pod, seemed very similar to Titanfall, but before I could irrationally award the game a perfect score for being even remotely similar to that legendary franchise, I had to witness the fucking horrific transition between cutscene and gameplay. Crucible, more than anything, just feels incredibly undercooked. This is supposed to be an official release, but it honestly seems like a pre-alpha build. For every genuinely fun idea, like plants that can turn you invisible, a scanning system, and a character who reloads by cycling between guns, there are a multitude of issues that will plague a player's enjoyment. Players will forgive paying premium currency for a skin based on a wartime poster from World War II, because that's what people expect in a free-to-play game. However, I seriously doubt many will be able to look past the fact that this game seems to look as if it was made for a PS3 and has a weird contrast color scheme like every clickbait gaming video you've ever seen. I'd love to recommend this game for players who just want to try something new in the hero shooter genre, but there's just so much more on offer that they could be playing instead. Crucible has to contend with juggernauts like Rainbow Six Siege, Overwatch, Valorant, and Apex Legends, which are all titles with such an enormous amount of replayability and polish. At this point, I would even recommend playing the discontinued Dirty Bomb over Crucible, because at least that still holds up to modern standards. People who talk about Crucible will probably call the game dead on arrival, but to be entirely honest, idiots will call some of the most successful games in the world dead if they don't particularly like them. I personally don't think that this game will peak any more than it has already, because as the saying goes in this industry, a delayed game is eventually good, but a rushed game is forever bad. Usually I'd mourn for a title like this having such a rough launch, especially when independent studios are often a single bad review away from insolvency. In this case, I think we can all ignore this game without guilt, knowing that it probably won't be the last title that loses Amazon a shit ton of money.